Thanks for joining. We're talking about the important subject of men again today. We're talking about the fact that young men are needed, older men are needed, and middle-aged men are needed. We're also talking about the fact that women are not our possession. And then finally, we're talking about what women need from us. This is our second installment in a three-part series. Let's go to it now. I'm talking to middle-aged men, and so I want to bring another phrase, our next statement towards specifically this group of middle-aged men, because they need to hear a very important message in the context of this subject today, and that is, young men need you, older men will help you. Now, when we say middle-aged, that's always going to be a bit of a debate about who is middle-aged. In my mind, I'm thinking of men between the ages of 30 and 60. That's roughly middle-aged. So if you're in that bracket, perhaps you thought you weren't old enough to be middle-aged yet, or perhaps you feel good about that because you think, oh, wow, I'm still in the middle-aged bracket and not in the seniors bracket. Whatever place you put yourself in, I'm speaking to those guys who are in the middle phases of their life, trying to lead their families, trying to pursue growth in their career, run their business, paying their bills, all the rest of this. To that guy, I want to say these words. Young men need you. Number two, older men will help you. Why am I saying this? Really, it comes down to this central idea that we, if there's going to be a collective, let it be on this sort of stuff, we have to break the cycle of fatherlessness. It's killing us all. Not just the men, but the women as well. Not just middle-aged people, younger people and older people are suffering badly from the ills of fatherlessness. Now, I know as well as anyone, we're living in a society today that says fathers don't matter that much. Take it or leave it. Life will be just the same whether you've got one or you haven't got one. Can I speak right to the heart of that matter and say that is absolute unmitigated nonsense. Our society is suffering badly from the epidemic of fatherlessness and the void that is created in people's understanding of their identity and their self-worth in the absence of solid fathering. And for our middle-aged men, we have a crucial role. I'm a middle-aged man. I understand I've got a crucial role for young men and towards older men to do my part to break the cycle of fatherlessness in our society. If we don't do something about it, we are going to continue to head off this cliff. Society is going to keep breaking down and fragmenting, and we will not be better off as a result of our rejection of fathering. We need to embrace the reality that good, healthy fathering is so important in society, and of course, there are millions of people who can tell the story of the opposite of that. And to those people, my heart goes out to them as well. But I need to say, rejecting everything about fathering is not the answer to dealing with the pain and the brokenness because of an experience with bad fathering. The solution to bad fathering is good fathering. The solution to families that break down is families that stay together. And so we need to break this cycle. To middle-aged men specifically, the gold that you will end up giving to others comes from defeating the giants that you're facing down today. I'm going to say that again. It's so important for many of you watching and listening. And again, you might be a woman watching this and you're thinking of your husband, your partner, your son, your own dad, an uncle, a friend. We've got to get this message far and wide by sharing and talking to help men realize there are people who are there advocating on their behalf, who understand and can resonate, and we need them to understand the truth. The gold that they are going to end up being able to offer to younger men is actually derived from defeating the giants that they're facing today. If you can imagine how important a product like olive oil is, or how enjoyable a product like wine is to so many millions of people around the world for cooking and enjoying and all the rest of it. Those products are the end results of a process. And we need to understand that when it comes to the olive oil or the wine in the bottle, it doesn't arrive in the world like that. There's a process that produce has to go through in order to get that end result. When it comes to the olive, it has to be crushed to get the oil out. When it comes to the wine, it comes from grapes that have to be stomped on and squashed. And all of us in our lives, in particular, I'm talking to men, and right in this moment, I'm talking to middle-aged men, because the season that you're in is like being an olive oil. It's like being a bucket full of grapes where you are pressured and pressed and squeezed. But here's the truth of it. What's going to come out of you if you stay with the process and stay the course, learn your lessons, keep your eyes on the prize, keep hope in your heart, what's coming out of you is going to be the flow of oil, the flow of wine, the flow of gold that benefits other people in your life if you can endure the crushing. And I want to urge you to keep going. Find other men, find resources, find things that will build you up and benefit you, because we all need you to keep going. We cannot have more men quitting because they feel hopeless otherwise. That is going to create a domino effect of other younger people, other younger men who miss out because they don't get to receive the gold and the flow from the men who are going through these battles ahead of them. Older men will help you. You might not have had a great experience with your own dad. You might feel orphaned and fatherless right now, but I guarantee you there are men in their 50s, 60s and 70s who would love the opportunity to help you, guide you, encourage you and share with you their lessons and their resources. If we could put our eyes more on connecting the generations, the younger, the middle-aged and the more senior, we could then create a collective strength that will benefit everybody in our lives. We need to rescue our young men from the narratives that are destroying them. They desperately need guides who care and believe, men who see their need for the right kind of voices, who are willing to invest in our young men to rescue them from the kind of narratives that are actually destroying their thinking. I want to make this statement here as well while we're talking about this point to our middle-aged men. A phrase that you will have heard a lot and you probably still hear from time to time is the notion, the idea of a self-made man. And our world loves to make a hero out of that guy, this guy who apparently came from nothing and became everything and went from rags to riches, as they like to say. We need to understand that the notion of a self-made man is a fallacy. There is no such thing as a self-made man. There's no such thing as a man who makes it on his own, who goes it alone and gets to his destination without having other resources, other people, other opportunities that help him to become the fullness of who he is. I once heard somebody say it like this, and it was probably the most truthful and powerful ways to phrase it, and that is that a self-made man, or the appearance of a self-made man, is just an orphaned man who found a way to survive alone. Well, if that's what a self-made man is, I don't want to be one. I don't want to be an orphaned man who discovered a way to survive alone. I want to be a connected man, an available man emotionally to my family and my friends. I want to be the kind of man who makes it because he makes it within the context of community and brings others with him. And we need to push against that lie that you can become a self-made man. You don't want to be, and it's not possible anyway. Older men, a word to you. We need you to reach down. We really, really need senior men to reach out to middle-aged men. Maybe they're your sons, maybe they're your nephews, maybe they're your work colleagues or neighbours. Older men, we need your lessons, we need your wisdom, we need your encouragement, your voice to say, hey guys, I got through it, I'll show you how to get through it as well. Middle-aged men, we need you to reach down to younger men and help them come along their pathway. But particularly to those men who perhaps are in their third, in the senior years of their life, I want to encourage you today, you are not done yet. We need you to help lift us up and help us to get to where we're going. You are absolutely not done yet. We need to move on to another thought, another idea here that is prevalent in today's world. And I want to say it like this, so important, especially for our young men to hear this, but all men everywhere. This is the statement: women are not our possession. Women are not our possession. Now, of course, I have to get into the Andrew Tate phenomenon for a moment or two. Most of you have heard of him, maybe indirectly, maybe you know a lot about him. Those of you who don't, Andrew Tate has become world famous for appealing to a subset of our young men because he appears to be a voice that they can look to, that they can trust, and that they can take advice from. Now, I want to be very, very clear about this because I'm sure there'll be those who oppose my viewpoint. I don't have a problem with that. Some of what Andrew Tate has to say about motivation and fitness and progress and goal setting are valuable truths. But just because a person says 2 or 3 good things does not mean that we should automatically put trust in everything they say. Now, Andrew Tate is a huge advocate for this notion that women are the possession of men, and that to be in a relationship with a woman means that she becomes your possession. Young men especially, but men everywhere, I need to say this really straight, nothing could be further from the truth. That is a lie, that is flawed, that is perverted, and it's destructive even to the men who try to think that way. Women were never meant to be the possession of men in the same way that men are not the possession of women, but rather in relationship, in marriage, in partnership, men are there to serve the empowerment and the growth and the reaching of full potential for women, not to put them in a place of ownership or possessiveness. Nothing good can come from that way of thinking. And we've got to retrain our young men who are starting to be drawn magnetically to this kind of narrative. It's going to cause you to mistreat women. It's going to cause you to give the label makers more reasons to say things like toxic masculinity. Women have not been given for the possession of men, and we have to combat that false statement. It is not truth. It is utter lies, and it will bind people up in knots and ruin relationships that could have been successful. The truth is that we as men are called to serve women and protect them with our strength. Now, there is the moderate balance of the two things. Of course, men are called to be strong. Of course, men are called to be masculine. And people get confused about, well, how do you bring that to the relationship with women? You bring your strength in relating to women with an attitude of humility that wants to serve them and protect them and help them to become who they're meant to be. That applies to wives. That applies to partners, that applies to daughters, that applies to extended family members and friends. That is the role that we're supposed to play, not treating them like possessions. That is utterly false, but rather, not being servile, we are called to serve each other with our best strengths, and we must help our young men to get away from that false narrative that women are our possession. They are not. And if you treat them that way, I guarantee you will never have the love of a good, faithful woman in your life, and you will destroy her and you will destroy yourself if you follow that pathway. We are supposed to bring our strength to those relationships, to honour them, serve them, protect them with our strength as we serve one another with our strengths. The truth is, we are there to help them reach their full potential, and not in a disempowering way where people say, oh, are you suggesting that women can't do anything without men? No, I'm not saying that at all. Women can do a lot of things without men, but women cannot do everything without men in the same way that men cannot do everything without women. I want to be one of the voices that goes counter-culture to what's going on right now, where we see so much content and conversation that's trying to pit men against women. And the reason why this is happening so much is because people's motive has gotten out of shape. People have become inspired by the motive of what can the other person give to me and do for me. Whereas what we need to do is get back to where we once were, and that is, what can I do for the other? And then another person can reciprocate with what they can do for you. When our focus and our motive is on serving each other with our strengths, suddenly teamwork and partnership and maximum potential is on the table. If we go men versus and women versus, we're always going to keep on failing. And part of the problem starts with this idea that women can become our possession. They can't, and they shouldn't. It doesn't help anybody. Let's move to Another statement here, I'm talking to men, but this one's probably going to trigger some people, so here we go. Let's talk to the men, young, middle-aged, and old, and talk about this statement, what women need from us men. Now, straight away, trigger all of the activists and all of the feminists who are going to jump in the comments, and I don't care if they do, who are going to say, here it is, a middle-aged white guy trying to tell us women what we need, how insulting. Well, when those phrases and those statements come out, I would urge you to have a look at yourself about what's going on in your own heart and your own life, about why you're so triggered that I would dare have a comment on this subject, because my motive is men understanding better than they ever have how they can serve and assist and empower women, not come against them and oppose them and bring them into a place of submission. So here we go. Let's get into it. I'm talking to men because the truth is the hatred of men in some women is partly the fault of other men. I'm going to say it again because you need to think about this. You need to chew it. You need to let it sit with you for a while before you go and have a reaction. The hatred of men in some women is partly the fault of other men. And so, men, we do need to take some responsibility for the fact that there is an increasing level of activism and hatred and militant feminism. Some of that responsibility lays at our feet. And when I say our feet, I'm talking about individual men who have created brokenness and betrayal and hurt and trauma in the lives of women. That is not our purpose. That's not why we were put on the planet. We were put here to do the opposite of all of those things. But we can see the fruits and the results, the consequences of what happens when men relate wrongly to women. This is why I'm qualified as a married man, a man who has a daughter, a man who has children, a man who has helped not just hundreds but thousands of families to walk this kind of pathway. I am qualified, at least to some extent, to talk to the subject of what women need from us men. And what do they need? Here's my belief. They need us to stand with them. Stand with them in their goals and their dreams, the maximizing of their gifts and abilities. They need us to stand with them. Number two, they need us to believe in them. And number three, they need us to empower them. Now, hopefully those of you who are getting ready to be triggered, all you activists that had your keyboard ready to go, hopefully you can start to lean into the motive of my heart that is not me trying to bring control and a small box for you to live in, but rather my motive is the unlocking and the empowerment and the release of men and women to become the fullness of what they were always meant to be. Women need men who will stand with them, believe in them, and empower them. And if we saw that more often, fathers to daughters, husbands to wives, boyfriends to girlfriends, friends to friends, if we saw more of that going on, we would see less militant feminism, we would see less activism, and we would see far less hatred of women, because our world would, hatred of men, our world would come to understand that when a man serves and lives in the way that he can and should, everybody benefits as a result. This is what women need from us men. And we need, men, we need to fight to be these kind of men. We need to put our energy and our resources to being these kind of men. What kind of men? I've listed a few traits. Men of strength, men of honor, men of integrity, men of trust, men of safety. Men of strength, honor, integrity, trust, safety. If we were these kinds of men, then the women in our lives would have an understanding that the role we play for them and with them is to stand with them, believe in them, and empower them. So, so crucial.